This is Research Like a Pro, Episode 13, Education. Welcome to Research Like a Pro, a genealogy podcast about taking your research to the next level, hosted by Nicole Dyer and Diana Elder, accredited genealogy professional. Diana and Nicole are the mother-daughter team at FamilyLocket.com and the creators of the Amazon best-selling book, Research Like a Pro, a Genealogist Guide. I'm Nicole, co-host of the podcast. Join Diana and me as we discuss how to stay organized, make progress in our research, and solve difficult cases. Let's go. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Research Like a Pro. We're excited to be here today discussing education. I'm here with Diana. How are you today, Diana?
I'm doing great and excited for this topic.
Me too. Before we dive into the topic, I have a review to read from one of our podcast listeners. His nickname is W4TMN, and his review is, I have been researching my family for over 40 years, learning lots of good stuff from this podcast and looking forward to diving into the book as soon as I can get some free time to dive in. Keep up the great work. Thank you for that great review. And he kind of highlighted one of the things that I love about podcasts is that it's a lot easier to fit them in than it is to fit in reading a book, right? Because you can listen while you're folding the laundry or making dinner or driving your commute or whatever it is that you do while you listen to podcasts, exercise, all of those fun things. What do you do when you listen to podcasts, Diana?
I do all of the above. So yes, I do. I love podcasts, and I like to listen to podcasts from a variety of different topics too. So it's a good way to just learn about something new. So I'm so glad because you're the one that introduced me to podcasts years ago. I'm so glad you did because it's been really, really beneficial. Let's get started with today's podcast. Today we're talking about the importance of continuing your genealogy education. And I love this little quote by Benjamin Franklin that I'm just going to start out with. He said, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. So I think would really agree with that the more you can learn about your research and localities and all the different things that make up genealogy, the better you're going to become as a genealogist and the more discoveries you're going to make with your family. So that was one of the really great things about accreditation when I went through that process. I started it 3 years ago and finished it up last year. I felt like it was such a huge boost in my education. And it's how I really learned how to do client work, how to take a problem and do a project that could be presented to a client. And funneling that into my own research has made all the difference. So we have so many fun and great ways to learn now through the internet and then just our traditional types of methods that people have been learning from each other how to do genealogy for years. So we're going to go through some of those different types of ways that you can learn and help you maybe have some ideas for how to create your own education plan.
Yes, and there's so many opportunities for learning in genetic genealogy right now as well. As everyone has been taking DNA tests, the pool is becoming enormous for matching your DNA with possible cousins. So it's exciting, and there's also a lot to learn. So there's a huge opportunity for education there. And before we started the podcast, Diana and I were just discussing the new standards that the Board for Certification of Genealogists have been working on for genetic genealogy. So it's interesting that they have recognized the need for an addition to their genealogy standards that focuses on how to use genetic results in your genealogy research and how that works together with traditional genealogy research. So when those standards come out soon, that will be really exciting. I think a while ago, they asked for public comments on the proposed DNA standards. So if you go to the geneticgenealogist.com, which is Blaine Bettinger's website, you can see a PDF of the proposed standards, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes. But it's just another one of those opportunities for continuing education in the genealogy field, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And I did a class, well, actually it was a course at SLIG, and I'll talk later in the podcast about what SLIG is, and it was all about advanced DNA methodology. And so it's really great that we do have places to get some help with that, because it is overwhelming and it is a lot for us to take on and to learn about. So let's talk about some of the things that we need to educate ourselves about in genealogy. And I think the first thing that we'll talk about are records. And obviously, records are the foundation of our genealogy. We have to really know what kind of records are out there and how to use the record and why the record was created. Because if we don't know that, we're going to be missing a lot of things in our research. This was one of the things that I did to prepare for accreditation, was to create an outline for each record type. So for instance, take the census records. I created an outline and just learned everything I could about census records. I read a book on census records, and I studied a lot of different articles and watched some webinars. I just did a really focused thing on census records. And it was so interesting because the census is something that I thought I knew everything about. You know, I've been using censuses since we started, Nicole, in 2003. You know, that was the basis of our genealogy research. So I was really, really amazed at how much I learned about the census record and how that has helped me in my research. So if anyone is interested in doing that type of an approach, I highly recommend I created a Google Doc and I just made myself an outline. And I kind of use those 3 steps. What is available? So I would put links to all the major resources for census research. And then I studied everything I could about how to use the census and put that in an outline form, and then did a little write-up about the history of the census. So I just tried to compile everything into my own little document. And of course, what happens when you do something like that, you learn it really, really well. It's so much better than just watching a webinar and then forgetting half of that later. When you've compiled something, it just becomes internalized and it seems to help you learn it better. So I would really, recommend doing something like that, thinking of all the record types that you want to learn about and to do some focus study on those.
So you created an outline for each record type that you thought would be helpful in your research. Did you focus only on records that would be used in your certain area for accreditation in the Gulf South of the United States?
I did. Those were the ones that I was concerned with, but they, in essence, covered all of the basic record types. I don't think there was anything that wasn't mentioned there. For accreditation, you have ones that are more important, and then of middling importance and then lesser importance. And so they're ranked like that. But I just decided this was my opportunity to really learn about each record type. So I pretty much covered everything from the census to manuscripts to military, you name it. And I worked on that.
I think ICAPGen has lists of record types for each region, don't they?
They do. So even if you're not planning on being accredited, you could go to that website and see what kind of record types you should be looking at for the area you're researching, because you may have not realized that there was a certain record type that you should be looking into.
Yeah, that's great. I'll have to put a link to that in the show notes so that people can check it out. But it's a great starting place to see which record types are most important for that region, and then additional record types that could be useful also.
Yeah, we often think that only a few record types are needed. And the answers to our brick walls and the really tough questions are not in those easy record types, or else they would have been found long ago. So that's when we have to dig down and we have to find something that's not as unusual. We have to go to the court records, or we have to do a newspaper study or a land study. So, it's really important to realize that there are a lot of different record types out there and to figure out how to use them.
Yeah, I think it's important to learn how to use them, because when I didn't use court records, they did seem overwhelming to me, and I didn't know how they were organized or what to look for. It just seemed like a lot of extraneous information that wasn't helpful. And now that I know how to use them, I found so many helpful hints and clues and evidence in court records. So it's so valuable and important to really learn how to use them and just try it. For me, I learn the best by just diving in and trying it. But I do appreciate having some background information about why that record even exists and who created it. And sometimes I just need to watch, a half an hour or an hour of a webinar that explains some of that, and then I'm ready to try it.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that because, of course, it is the best learning experience to actually get into the records and try using that particular record set. So I completely agree with that. There's nothing like looking at a record to help you understand it.
That's another benefit of indexing, I think, is that if you do volunteer indexing with Family Search, it can expose you to some different kinds of record types that you might not have seen before and help you learn about them.
That's a good point. And another way to think about record types or to learn about record types is to read a journal like the National Genealogical Societies journal, because the people that write in their articles, if you go carefully look at all their source citations, you'll see a wide variety of sources and record types that they've used. And it also can show you how they've used those record types to prove their conclusions. So that's another great way to kind of see what's available and what give you ideas of what you could use in researching your family.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about another area besides records to educate yourself on, and that's locality. And we talk all about researching the locality in our book, and we have a podcast just about locality. But just kind of a reminder here that you need to continue to learn about the places that your ancestors lived. And one of the things that I like to do is to read a book. I've always loved to read. I love reading, fiction, nonfiction. And if you can find a great book, it can be fiction, but, nonfiction might be a little bit more detailed about an area or a particular point of history that your ancestors lived through. It will be a fun way for you to learn. And this summer, one of the book clubs that I belong to was reading Trail of Tears, which is about the removal of the 5 civilized tribes from the Southeast in the 1830s. And I tackled that book. It's a pretty long, pretty hefty book, but it was fascinating. And it was the best education for me in understanding why all the land became freed up for my ancestors to move into. It was actually really sad to read about the removal of the Creeks and the Cherokees and the Chickasaws, 3 of those tribes. So I would highly recommend finding great books on the history of your area. Another really fun thing that I've read a lot about is the Dust Bowl, because my dad lived through the Dust Bowl in the 1930s in Oklahoma. And so I've read several books about that time period. I would ask him about it, and he would tell me little stories about how they'd cover their mouths with the handkerchief when the dust storms came. But he wasn't really a man of a lot of words, and so I couldn't, and he was a little kid when it happened, so I didn't get a lot of details. But I've read some really excellent books about the Dust Bowl that completely opened up that era to me, much more so than just the little bit of stories that my dad gave me. In fact, when I would ask him about it, he would say, well, just go read Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. That was our story, driving along Highway 66 going into California. And so when I read that book, I was kind of appalled. I was like, wow, this was really what happened. But it was.
I remember reading that book in college and just loving it because I felt such a connection to Grandpa while I read it. Learning about history is obviously a passion of mine since I studied that in college. My degree was in history teaching. So I definitely agree with you that there's a huge benefit to reading books about history and studying the history to learn about the place our ancestors lived. And also, I think it's important to study the geography of our ancestors' location. And of course, we've already talked about this in our episode about locality, but it's something that we can do continually to experiment with new map websites like Google Earth Pro and learn how to map the land coordinates and all kinds of different ways that we can use maps to help us understand the geography of the place our ancestors lived.
Yeah, I really had fun with that Google Earth Pro. You can take your land coordinates from the original land patents, or if you have a land record, and it'll give you like the 1/4 southeast section. You get all those kind of cryptic terminology things, and you can take those and put those over the map and see, you really can pinpoint where your ancestor was living and where their land was. So it may seem kind of tricky and kind of difficult, but it's such a big thing that there are a lot of people that have written great blog posts about that, and the websites themselves give you some help. So everybody's really interested in teaching each other about how to use these cool new mapping sites. So highly recommend, if you're interested in the land, to just spend a little time learning about how to use maps. So the other thing that's really important for us to educate on ourselves on, besides the records and the locality, is just basic research methodology. How do we do this? What do we use? And you might have a situation where you've come upon a county where the courthouse burned and the basic records that you would use are gone, and then you don't know what to do. Well, there are a lot of helps out there to learn how to do research in a county where the courthouse burned. Or what if you're trying to find that elusive female ancestor? We all have those brick walls where it ends with our female. There are a lot of methodology for doing that. So you could really research how to find your female ancestors and become expert and put your new knowledge to use in your own family tree. Some other things that you might want to spend a little time learning about so that you can become a better researcher is using those censuses before 1850. What's the good methodology for using those? There is a good methodology for that, and so you would want to learn about that. Maybe you want to learn about writing up your research. Obviously, the best way to learn is to just try it, but if you have no idea what to do, then reading some other people's research, how they write it up, and thinking of some basic principles could help you get started. Evidence analysis is super important as we look at our records. And so, learning more about evidence analysis is going to help you in your research, and learning how to plan your research. And then what about transcribing and abstracting documents? That's a whole skill in and of itself that I had to learn the real details of how to do that, because I knew I'd be tested on that for accreditation. So there are a lot of helps out there for doing that, as well as reading old handwriting. Perhaps you're working in an area and you've got some tricky things that you're trying to transcribe, and so you may need to actually watch a webinar or read a book or take a class on how to read some old handwriting if it's really difficult. So there's lots of different things that you're going to come across in your research where you may need to just stop and then get a little education on that, and that will help you to keep going and making more progress.
Right. I think it's important that we, take a step back every once in a while and just set a goal or make a plan for what we want to learn, and focus in on, I really need to learn more about how to research in Ireland, or I want to learn how to abstract documents better, or read old handwriting. Or maybe you just need to take a few weeks and just really practice learning how to do source citations. When I did that, it really took my research capabilities to the next level, because I could understand the source and I could easily cite it in my research log, and I felt much more proficient in my research. So maybe it's okay to just step back from researching and learn something to help you.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that original quote by Benjamin Franklin, that you're investing in your genealogy education, and it's going to pay you a lot of dividends in the end, because you're going to get better rather than just spinning your wheels doing the same thing over and over. Take some time to educate yourself and see what you can learn. Now, if you're like me, you might need to set yourself goals. Sometimes we have to write things down, and we have to make a real plan and give ourselves a time frame, not just say, someday I'm going to learn about Irish research. Well, we all know someday will never come unless you have a plan and you set yourself a goal. So I like to do long-term and short-term goals, and this is exactly how I got accreditation done. I set the long-term goal, I said, okay, I'm going to do it in this year, but then I had to break that up into a ton of short-term goals. So every month I would say, okay, this month learn about the census records, and the next month learn about probate records. And so doing that helped me to get all the way through everything I needed to do without feeling totally overwhelmed. I knew it was all going towards accreditation, but I knew for that month I just had to do this little bit of it. So, if maybe you're diving into African American research for the first time, and you could set yourself a goal and say, okay, for the next 6 months, I'm going to do African American research and really learn about that. I'm going to try my hand at it, maybe do a project with it, and focus just on that, and let some of your other research go by the wayside while you're focusing, because we have to do deep work sometimes on these projects to really learn. So having goals is going to help us to focus in on what we want to do. And then we have really got to think of a specific method. We can't just say, okay, I want to learn African American research and then start clicking around on websites, because you'll find some stuff, but you maybe won't have a good plan for that. So there's a lot of great learning opportunities out there, and we're going to go through some of our favorites.
Well, of course, one of our favorites is going to be books, because we love to read and we've also written a couple books ourselves. So let's talk about books first. How can you find a book about what you want to learn? One great way to do that is to look at some of the syllabuses that you have from going to genealogy classes or workshops. And often the presenter will list at the end a bibliography for excellent books or articles about that specific topic. So you can find great books in that way. One of our books that we really love is Evidence Explained by Elizabeth Shown Mills. And a lot of people say that that's just a great guide and place to start for source citations. And Diana, what are some other books that you like for just kind of basic genealogy info?
Well, one of the things, let me just make this comment about Evidence Explained. The first 2 chapters teach you all about evidence and examining the records and the sources for evidence. And so I like to go through and read those chapters every few months just as a refresher course, because there's so much to be learned from them. So if you order Evidence Explained, or I would say go to your library, get an interlibrary loan, and look at a copy that way if you don't want to purchase it, and study those first 2 chapters. It'll make such a difference in your research. So aside from that one, I also love, if you're a United States researcher, Val Greenwood's book called The Researcher's Guide to American Genealogy. And when I was preparing for accreditation, we were taking a trip, I think it was to Washington, a long road trip in the car. And I had that book, and I decided that I was just going to read that all the way up and all the way back. And I pretty much got it done in that road trip. But again, it was a great education for me on various record types. So we'll put that in the show notes also, The Researcher's Guide to American Genealogy. Well, what about those of you who are not researching in the United States? How do you find a great book for researching in your country? I would suggest that you do a Google search and just put that in. What's the best book for researching in Ireland? And what you will find in your results, you will find people who've written blog posts or magazine articles who are reviewing books. And you can also go on Amazon.com and just put in book on Irish genealogy, and that'll bring up several. You can read the reviews that people have put in there. And you don't have to purchase a book. You can, again, do interlibrary loan. Go to your local library. Maybe they will, let you request books. My library does that, and so I can request any book I want. It's really fun when I get a book like that and I look at where it came from. Sometimes it's, Michigan or Florida, and it's come all the way across the country, and here I have this book. It's great. So I highly recommend using interlibrary loan to check out some of these books that you might want to have in your library to refer to. My criteria for a great book is one that I pick up all the time and use. So I have got one book that I'm just going to do a little shout out here for, because for me it's just invaluable. And I bought it a few years ago, and this is seriously the book that I pick up every single day and use. And it's called Map Guide to the U.S. Federal Censuses 1790 to 1920. And it's by William Thorndale and William Dollarhide. And the reason I love this book so much is that I can turn to any state and turn to any census year, and it will show what the state looked like. It'll show the county boundaries. Okay, so you might be asking, why is that helpful? Why do I turn to this? Well, if I'm researching in 1850 in Alabama and I'm in a certain county, I want to see if the county boundaries are the same as they are the next year, if there was a boundary change, if I am looking in the right place for the records. So that book has been super helpful for me. Now, you may have another book, Nicole, that you love and that you turn to all the time. You may not have as many books as I do because I kind of collected a few.
You have so many books. When we moved, I got rid of some books, and I'm not sad about most of the ones I got rid of, but I didn't really have any genealogy books because I usually just use online resources for a lot of things. And I would love to have your book about maps for censuses, because maybe that would be easier than looking at the websites that show the county boundary changes. But I think asking experts what their favorite books are is a great way to get recommendations. For example, I was at a workshop recently at the Pima County Genealogy Society, which I'm a member of, and we had a workshop about Irish research, and the presenter did a fabulous job. He's an expert Irish researcher up at the McClelland Library in Phoenix, and there's an Irish Cultural Center there. Anyway, so he gave us a recommendation for the best book on tracing your Irish roots and told us about it. And he mentioned that, the author, John Grenham, knows everything about all the records that are available in Ireland because so many of them burned. So he said that if you want to find the best book about Irish research, you need to get Tracing Your Irish Ancestors by John Grenham. And I was so thankful for that recommendation, because there are several books about researching in Ireland, and now I know which one I would get if I was ready to buy one and learn about it. So I think asking experts is really a helpful idea. And I know on some other genealogy podcasts, they'll do book reviews and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of ways to find good books out there.
I'm so glad you mentioned John Grenham, because he has a wonderful website too on Irish ancestry that I've used for one of my client projects. And I've been so impressed with him. And in fact, when I got this client project, I knew it was in Ireland, which obviously is not my specialty in the United States, Southeast United States. And so I needed to come up to speed really quickly on Irish research. So I turned to webinars, because kind of like podcasts, webinars you can have playing as you are, in my case, making dinner or doing laundry or ironing. I still do ironing. I know a lot of people have given that up, but I still do that. And I watched all of John Grenham's. He had a set of 5 webinars on Irish research. I watched all 5 of those. It took me, I don't think they were fully an hour. It took me 2 or 3 hours while I was doing some other things. And by the end, I had such a great basis for starting some Irish work. I was amazed at how much I learned. And so webinars are another great tool for learning. I don't know that I would have been able to read through his book in 5 hours, probably not. But I could watch the webinars because I could do other things while I was listening. So how do you find the webinars? A great website that we'll put in the show notes is Genie Webinars. And it's a website that is literally a calendar of all the webinars that are coming up. And it includes Google Hangouts or meetings, and there are all those that are offered throughout the online genealogy community. And so that's a great place to get started. And if you've been doing genealogy for a bit, you may have heard of the Legacy Family Tree webinars. And this is kind of the main place to get webinars on the web. And there is a subscription fee if you want to watch their library of archived webinars, but you can register for free for upcoming webinars. And then you have You can either watch it live or you have a week to watch it, and it's free before it goes into the library. So before I got a subscription, I watched a ton of webinars for free. Just as they'd come up every week, I would make sure I watched it. And then eventually they were having a big sale, and I decided to just subscribe, which was very helpful because then I could go watch the 5 hours of John Grenham's Irish research and really focus in on what I needed to learn about that week. So Legacy Family Tree Webinars is a great one. Cindy's List has a list of online courses or webinars. So that's another great place to go. We've just started a YouTube channel for ICAPGen where we have free videos, basically webinars on building your research skills and, if you're interested in accreditation, how to become an accredited genealogist professional. The Board for Certification of Genealogists also has webinars, and those are now hosted on the Legacy Family Tree Webinars site. And I think many of those are free, even if you don't subscribe, or if you subscribe, you can have all of those. And then for free, we have the Family Search Learning Center, which has just a multitude of free videos and webinars that have been produced by the professionals at the Family History Library. And those are all free. There's also a fun Google Hangout type thing that's titled Mondays with Mert. And that's every Monday. It's a free 1 hour session. You can view it live or you can find it on YouTube recorded. And that is hosted by our friend Pat Richley Erickson, and really has great information also. So as you can tell, there are a lot of places on the internet now for us to get information and to learn. I titled a blog post, The Wonderful World of Webinars, a couple of years back, and it truly is wonderful what we can learn now, and most of it free.
If you prefer to go somewhere, of course, you can also go to a conference. We love doing that also. It's a fun way to really get immersed in genealogy and also network with other genealogists. And something to be said for being immersed in a topic for a week is that you really come out of it having so much more knowledge than you did before. Although some people have said that after a conference, they feel like they've been drinking from a fire hose. But the benefits of it are that you really just get to dive in and be around a lot of people that are like-minded, and it can be really fun. So we always go to Roots Tech now every year, and we love it. We're going to talk now about all kinds of conferences that you can attend. Let's talk first about local conferences. You may have a genealogy society in your area. In my town, Tucson, we have the Pima County Genealogical Society, and we frequently have meetings every month and workshops where we can learn from experts. And there could be in your area even more than just one. There could be several. For example, in California, they have the Southern California Genealogical Society, which is really large, and they have a big conference every year called the Jamboree, and they have a section of it that's just focused on DNA and genetic genealogy, so that's really popular. And so you might be able to find regional conferences like that. Another one that you can look out for is the BYU Conference on Family History and Genealogy if you're in the Utah area, or if you want to come out to Brigham Young University for that. And you can learn about accreditation at that conference. That's where Diana first really learned about how to become accredited, because they have a whole track of classes there just dedicated to telling you how to become an accredited genealogist professional. So that one can be really valuable. And of course, like I mentioned, there are the national conferences like Roots Tech, which is in Salt Lake City and is now expanding to London, which is really exciting. So the first London Roots Tech will be in October of 2019. And so that is exciting. And then, of course, we have the National Genealogical Society, which has an annual conference every year. And there's the FGS, Federation of Genealogical Societies, that has a conference. And so there's a lot of these national conferences. And then I know in England, they have several conferences there. Who do you think you are? And so forth. So wherever you are, there's probably going to be some local and some national conferences that could interest you. And from our experience, we really come out of these conference situations where you've been going for several days and you learn a lot, we come out of it just really inspired for how to go forward and improve our education, improve our research, and ready to go forward with our studies. So I recommend it, even if you can only do once a year.
Yeah, I agree. I was just at the BYU Family History Conference in July, and I presented 5 classes. But when I wasn't presenting, I tried to go to some topics that I was really unfamiliar with. And we were lucky this year because we had Kurt Witcher come out. He is from the Allen County Library back in the Midwest, and he presented some really interesting topics. And I think my very favorite one was on Native Americans. He presented in an hour an amazing methodology for Native American research, and I'm just itching to try my hand at some. So if anybody out there has some Native American research, let me know, because I would just love to try a project on that. And I don't have anybody, now that I disproved my second great grandmother was not a Cherokee, I don't have anybody in my family. Nicole, we need to discover some Native Americans.
Well, there is that one princess back in Dad's line in the 1600s that we always hear about.
That is true, but she's so far back. But conferences, yeah, there really is nothing like, there's just this fun energy about it. There's something about being with a bunch of other people who are like you, because you might feel like you're all alone. Maybe you're the only genealogist in your family and everybody thinks you're kind of weird because you love, digging into all these records. But when you go to a conference, you're with all these other people that love doing what you do, and it's so energizing and so fun. So what if you want to dig a little bit deeper on a topic? Because in a conference, you go to a 1-hour class and you have all these different scattering of topics. Now, if you want to go deeper on just one specific topic, then you might want to try out an institute. And there are several different genealogical institutes. And when I first heard of institutes, I had absolutely no idea what it was. I think Nicole and I were at Roots Tech, and someone said, well, have you been to SLIG? And I was like, I have no idea what SLIG is. Well, SLIG stands for Salt Lake Institute of Genealogy. And it's been going for several years. I don't even know how long, probably over 20. And it's held every January. It's a Monday through Friday course. You go every day. You start at 8 o'clock and you go until 4 o'clock. And you focus on a specific topic. So like I said earlier in the podcast, my first SLIG experience was this January, and I did advanced DNA. And so for an entire week, we taught DNA and how to use it. For our research, we talked about the ethics of DNA. We talked about methodologies, different types of computer programs to use. We had experts come and lecture for us, as well as the main teacher. And it was really great education. And I came away with a whole syllabus of DNA and charts and ideas. But most of all, I came away with a really solid understanding of methodology for how I need to use DNA. Do I remember everything I learned? No, I don't. But I have my notes and I have my syllabus so that I know where to go to get the details when I need them. So other places where you can go to access an institute, they have one that's called GRIP, which is the Genealogical Research Institute of Pittsburgh. That one is every June, July, sometime there in the summer. And so if you're on the East Coast, you may want to try out GRIP. There is a special one that is just on federal records, the Genealogical Institute on federal records. That one's in July. And I believe that one, that they are right there at the National Archives and, learn for a period of time about those records. There's a British Institute that's again held in Salt Lake City, Utah. And that one is, focusing on the British Isles. So if you're doing Irish, Welsh, Scottish, or English research, you maybe would want to come for a week-long immersion in the British Institute. If you want to be a forensic genealogist, there's an institute there in Dallas, Texas in March. And then, of course, we have a lot of virtual institutes. So people have recognized that we can't all travel and go to one place for a whole week. So we have got a virtual institute of genealogical research. So we'll put links to all of those in the show notes, and you can explore and think about if you are interested in really diving deep into a particular topic. So I've already signed up for SLIG for January. I will be taking the Southern Research course, which I'm really excited about. Even though that's my topic of accreditation, I'm excited to learn from the presenter there, who will be going really in depth on a lot of different things. And if there's one thing I've learned, is that I don't know everything about anything. So I'm excited to go and learn more about my area of specialty.
Yes, I wish I were going to that with you. Well, another way that we can learn more about genealogy is by reading blogs by authors who have expertise in their area. One way that you can follow blogs is by simply signing up for the email subscription list for the blog. And then every time they have a new article, then you get an email. If you don't want to receive emails about blog posts, then another thing you can do is sign up for Feedly, which is an app and a website where you can manage your subscription to different websites, and you can see when there's a new blog post for the ones that you're interested in. So Feedly is a tool that I recommend. You can also use it on your phone. So instead of turning on social media, when you're bored, you can open up Feedly and read some articles to improve your genealogy knowledge. So here I'll tell you some of my favorite blogs for genealogy: The Legal Genealogist with Judy Russell, Amy Johnson Crow's blog, Blaine Bettinger's blog about genetic genealogy, and the Family Tree magazine, Genealogy Gems with Lisa Louise Cook. I also like the In-Depth Genealogist, and another DNA one with Roberta Estes is the DNA Explained blog. And there are so many more. Mom already mentioned John Grenham's website about Irish roots. And all of the main genealogy companies have blogs that have helpful articles. So there's the Family Search blog and the Ancestry blog and the MyHeritage blog and so forth. And there's Randy Seaver's blog, Jenny Musings, and there's the Dutch Genealogy blog by Yvette Hoytnick, and so many more out there that you can look at. Lisa Lison's blog about Are You My Cousin? She has a lot of research tips on there. There's the Dear Myrtle blog and Genealogy Star with James Tanner. So as you can hear, there are just hundreds of blogs out there, and there's blogs that are focused on certain types of research, like Laura's Genealogy is about Jewish research. There's Louis Kessler's blog that's all about genealogy technology and software, and he does reviews there. So we'll put some links in the show notes, and you can look at all the different blogs there are about genealogy.
Yeah, and one thing that really helps me is I love how Randy Seaver in his Jenny Musings, every week he will do his list of, he reads like hundreds of blogs a week, and then he will compile a list of his 10 to 15 favorite blogs of the whole week. So that's another really fun way, is to go to his list of the best, because then you can just read what he thinks is the best. And, we're always really honored when we're on his lists from some of our blog posts on Family Locket. But it is a really fun way, without having to read a ton of blogs, with just getting, some of the best that are out there. So another great way to learn is through journals and magazines. And Nicole was mentioning genealogy societies, and some of these societies put out a quarterly magazine. So the Utah Genealogical Society has a quarterly magazine, and it's called Crossroads, and people can submit articles to that. And I have learned so much from reading these fun magazines, and I always love it when a new one comes in the mail, because I do like to get things in print. I work so much on the computer that if I can help it, I don't like to read things on the computer that I could read, laying down on the couch taking a break. So I really do like to support the print industry and order the print copies of these things. Another one I get is the National Genealogical Society Quarterly that I referenced earlier in the podcast. And this is the one where they have featured these amazing research projects where people have proven relationships and identities, really, really difficult problems. And you can read through that and see how they solved the problems and see the sources, all the records that they used. So it can be a real education just reading one article out of the NGSQ. And I'll just give you a caveat right now that they are tricky to understand because they're boiled down to the most important things. And so sometimes I will have to reread an article 2 or 3 times to really understand all the research in it. But I've learned a lot from that. So I would highly recommend getting a subscription, joining the NGS, National Genealogical Society, and then you'll start getting the quarterly as well as their magazine. And their magazine is a little bit different. In that one, they just feature all sorts of really interesting articles. And when I get the magazine, I read it from the first page to the very last, and I have learned some really, really interesting things. So they will have everything from talking about World War I to recording tools for audio in your family history. They will just have so many interesting articles. So I highly recommend that. Now, let's say that you are focused on research in New England, then you might want to be part of the New England Historic Genealogical Society and get their quarterly, which is called the Register. And that's going to give you tips on your New England research. So take a look, at your research areas and think about if there maybe is some kind of a journal or a magazine that you'd like to subscribe to. And perhaps that would help you to learn more.
Let's talk for a minute about genealogical societies. If there is a genealogical society in your area, why not join it and start going to their monthly meetings and their classes? In our area, I mentioned we have the Pima County Genealogy Society, and we not only have monthly meetings where we have a program and a class, but we also have several special interest groups that meet regularly as well. So we have a Roots Magic special interest group, we have a DNA special interest group, and these are smaller groups that get together and they work on projects and they discuss things that they're doing. And it's really good to have colleagues that you can ask your questions to and provide feedback to each other. And another benefit of a genealogical society is, every once in a while, they can invite a big name speaker and have a seminar. We had CC Moore last year, and it was wonderful to hear from her and to get to meet her and learn all of her expertise about DNA and genetic genealogy. So consider joining a genealogical society. And some genealogy societies also have quarterlies or magazines or newsletters that you can also subscribe to. So if you don't live in the area, you can receive their publication and learn more about researching in that area. So if you're researching in South Carolina, you can sign up for the South Carolina Genealogy Society, and you can start receiving more information from them about how to do research there and what's available in that state.
Right. I have been so impressed with what you've been able to learn at your Pima County Genealogical Society. So I wish we had one that was a little bit more local. In Utah, we just have the big one, and we don't actually have meetings or things like that because we have so many other opportunities, through the university, through BYU and Roots Tech, and we have SLIG. So we don't have the small meetings, which I think would be really fun. Another way you can learn is to take a course, to do a formal class or a course. And it's been really fun because Nicole and I have started the Research Like a Pro study group. We started that a year ago. We're now on our 4th iteration of that. But then we decided to do the e-course also because we knew a lot of people couldn't commit to meeting with us every other week like we do at the study group and would like to just do something on their own time. And so we've been really excited to have a lot of people join the e-course and who are working through the process on their own. So we invite you, if you're interested in doing the Research Like a Pro e-course or study group, to go to our website, and we have registration is closed for both of those right now, but it will open up again, and you can subscribe to a special newsletter so that you'll get advance notice of when that registration will open up again so that you could be part of that if that's something that you're interested in. There are lots of other good online e-courses. Boston University has one that's called the Certificate in Genealogical Research, and that's a 14-week course where you focus in on lots of different elements of genealogy research. BYU Idaho has an entire online family history degree. So if you're interested in taking a series of classes and getting a degree, you can do that all online. BYU has a family history degree. That one you actually have to attend classes in person on campus. But if you are live within range of Brigham Young University and you don't have a degree already from that university, you could certainly pursue a family history degree. And the friend that I did accreditation with, that's exactly what she did. Her children were all grown and she wanted to finish college and found the family history degree and went through that. She's now an accredited genealogist and she's working on a master's degree from the Strathclyde University, which is also an online program. So there are some really great ways for you out there to do a whole course. And, I highly recommend figuring out something that was going to work with your schedule, because a course can motivate you to really get down to business and get something learned. So it might be just the perfect thing that you've been thinking about.
That's true. I think it's really motivational to actually sign up for a class. And even if you pay for the class, it makes you feel more motivated to actually participate and do the assignments. I know that works really well for me. If I sign up for a class where I have to pay and I have to have assignments submitted by a certain time, then it's good for me. It's motivational. It helps me get it done. So that's one reason to consider signing up for something if you are busy or if you need that extra structure to help you get it done. Well, after doing the study group with Diana the first time, I've done it now 3 times. We're in the 4th study group. I've done a research project each time, and it's really helped me to learn how to research in an organized way. So I guess what I want to say is that now that I've done the study group 3 times, I feel so much more confident with my ability to solve difficult research problems. So let me tell you about that. And actually, we will dive into this more in the next episode when we do a case study of this. It's my ancestor, Lucinda Keaton, and I was wanting to discover her parents. And so far, this has been one of my most successful research projects because using the Research Like a Pro method helped me to narrow down what exactly I needed to look for and then find where that was available and then discover her parents. And it was a success, and I'm excited to tell you about it next week. So I guess as we finish up today, we just want to say, whatever way that you decide to improve your education in genealogy, make sure that you put it into practice. And as you learn and go, return to your difficult research problems that you haven't been able to solve in the past and see if your new knowledge can help you as you tackle them, and see if you can make some more discoveries. And we encourage you to reach out and let us know any questions that you have and leave us a review for the podcast, because we want to start reading your questions and answering them at the beginning of the podcast each time. So please go to Stitcher or iTunes and leave us a review and write us some questions or comments so that we can read them. And we hope you guys have a great week.
Goodbye, everybody. Have fun with your research.
Thank you for listening to Research Like a Pro with Diana Elder, accredited genealogy professional, and Nicole Dyer. We hope that something you heard today will help you make progress in your own genealogy research. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher, or visit our website, familylocket.com, to contact us. You can find our book, Research Like a Pro, A Genealogist Guide, on Amazon.com and other booksellers. We hope you'll start now to research like a pro.